I freaking love The Thing. It's easily in my top 10 favorite horror movies. No, top 5. For those unfamiliar or unassimilated, The Thing is a cult 1982 horror movie directed by the master himself, John Carpenter, and starring Kurt Russell. Set in a scientific research base in the middle of Antarctica, it follows a group of men trying to survive a parasitic alien able to perfectly mimic its hosts. It was, and still is, an impressive, grotesque display of body horror, with practical effects that still induce vomiting to this day. Although, as any fan of it will tell you, it's not the blood and guts that makes The Thing a classic. No, it's watching these characters fall into utter paranoia and mistrust, as they try to figure out who among them is a thing. While The Thing is held in high regard today, back in '82 it was a commercial failure, and besides a comic book follow-up in '91, was never given a proper sequel. That was until 20 years later, when a video game sequel was produced, simply called The Thing. Originally developed by Computer Artworks and released in 2002 for the Xbox, PS2, and PC, the game was well received, praised for capturing its source material's atmosphere and translating its concepts into video game form. Today, it is looked at as a solid example of a licensed video game done right, which was a rarity back in the time of its release. Unlike the movie, it was enough of a commercial success that a sequel was planned, but unfortunately it was cancelled, leaving The Thing to fade into obscurity. That is, until now. The Remaster masters at Nightdive Studios have gotten their slimy tentacles on this classic, and given it a much-deserved spit shine. In today's video, I'll be lending my thoughts on Nightdive's latest effort, to help you decide if The Thing is worth defrosting. But before we get started, I want to say a big thank you to Nightdive Studios for providing the review code. So let's warm up the flamethrower, grab some petri dishes, and go look for Childs.
Where were you, Childs?
It's time for some body horror.
The base is gone, Colonel. It looks like massive explosives damage. Any clues here are gonna be like finding a needle in a haystack.
The Thing takes place shortly after the events of the film. You play as Captain J.F. Blake, a no-nonsense U.S. Special Forces soldier with a voice reminiscent of Kurt Russell's character, MacReady.
Yeah, we're not alone in the universe and all that crap. Check it out and move on.
Blake, along with his team, have been ordered to investigate Outpost 31, and during their investigation, they find that nothing is wrong, everyone is okay, and they all go home, get some cocoa, and play computer chess.
Bitch.
Okay, not really. They run into an insidious cosmic horror that begins to viciously rip them apart and drive them insane. The Thing is labeled as a squad-based survival horror shooter, although I'd say the game leans a lot more on the shooter portion of that label. The player is able to lead a team of up to 4 very replaceable squad mates who will assist them in alien-killing carnage, assuming you can keep their trust. While the game throws a few brain teasers at you, the primary thrust is fast-paced shooting, surviving meat monsters, as well as the elements, with a small but useful arsenal of weapons and a wide variety of support items. Much like the movie, the game begins with a slow build of suspense, as you explore the smoldering wreckage of Outpost 31, finding familiar locations from the film among the debris, like the unfinished UFO buried beneath Blair's cabin.
What do you think it is, Captain?
I don't know and I don't care.
Fun fact, late actor Wilford Brimley played Blair, whom many of you know as this guy.
Diabetes.
And if every other YouTuber has made that reference, my apologies.
Diabetes.
Since Outpost 31 was destroyed, most of the game takes place in the Norwegian base that was briefly shown in the film. In the game, the base has been expanded to be a larger industrial complex, holding some fascinating surprises. Ah, so these Norwegians were up to a lot more than being in a bad prequel.
We got ambushed by these things. I don't know where they came from, man. Everybody lost it.
As far as the story goes, I gotta say it's not bad, but it's also not good. It's just there, not really adding all that much to the Thing universe or adding all that much to the original movie. Without giving too much away, what you ultimately uncover is that there's a mysterious corporation at work in the Antarctic region with nefarious plans for the alien organism, and you are the only cookie-cutter badass who can stop it. It's a basic and frankly video gamey story, existing to justify the gameplay and not much else. And personally, I stress, personally, I don't really consider this an official canon sequel to The Thing. I look at it more as a what-if scenario, or fanfiction even. Frankly, I don't think The Thing needs a sequel. I consider the ending of the movie to be perfect, and I think the fates of MacReady and Childs should be left to the debates of hardcore fans. But I'm not mad at any of this, because I think the overall gameplay experience is far more of a draw than the narrative one. The game does a fine job of capturing the atmosphere of the movie, contrasting the cold, lifeless Arctic against the deep reds and tans of the chaotic alien flesh beasts, creating a sense of unease and sharp danger. Not to mention the blinding blizzard and fields of white snow illuminated by dim light poles makes you feel utterly trapped and terrified of getting lost. Until you realize many of the outdoor areas are pretty small and it's very unlikely you will get lost. But the effect is still there. Some credit also needs to be given to the game's cutscenes that are nicely directed with claustrophobic compositions and effective tracking shots, giving the impression that you're being watched. Graphically, I think this remaster looks exactly as it should. Nightdive is fantastic about bringing in modern flourishes while still making the game read like the era it's from. In this case, the 6th console generation. I bet some of you unfamiliar with this game are looking at this thinking, yeah, that looks like a PS2 or Xbox game, when in fact, this is my copy of The Thing on PS2, captured from original hardware in all its fuzzy glory. Pretty much everything has been improved. The textures have been completely redrawn in higher resolutions, sticking to their original look but expressing fine, sharp details, glazed over with shiny bump maps to better express their texture. Geometry for character models and the environments themselves are noticeably more complex, but still retain a blocky aesthetic that reads true to the games of that era. Speaking of the environments, they've received a noticeable detail pass, with things like torn up drapes, icicles, garbage, and debris characterizing them further. And naturally, the monsters are more detailed, shiny with blood and viscera, with some sporting different shades of color to better distinguish them. The lighting has been completely overhauled. Now the world is sparsely illuminated with dynamic lights that beautifully add to the atmosphere. There's also colored lighting littered about to break up all the blue and gray. The UI has also been redrawn, faithful to the original aesthetic while adding some new icons to aid the player, like a fire symbol on the monsters when they're weak enough to be burned. And naturally, it's all rendered in 4K and running at a minimum of 60 frames per second. I should mention I only played the PC version and cannot speak for the console versions, so anybody playing on PS5, Series, or Switch, let me know how your experience is in the comments. It's a stellar effort and exactly what you hope for from a Nightdive remaster. A clear visual improvement that also looks exactly as you remembered it. All of this is of course thanks to Nightdive's Kex engine, which just keeps getting better and better, and much like the Thing itself, has an astonishing ability to absorb other engines and mimic them. If I had a complaint, or rather a nitpick, I am a little bummed we don't have the option to swap to the original graphics. It's not a necessary thing, but I always appreciate it in remasters that do feature it. It's nice to see the comparison between the old and the new. Who knows, maybe there's a cheat code to do it like in the Turok 3 remaster. There was some technical roughness. I kept having what I thought was a funny bug where when I came out of the first-person view mode, my head and backpack would disappear. None to worry though, as they would come right back after I entered first-person view mode again. The worst though was that the game did have a tendency to crash, at least for me, usually once per play session. Fortunately, the game has a pretty fair autosave, so it wasn't like I lost a lot of progress from this. Besides those hiccups, which I imagine can be rectified with patches, the game was polished and ran like butter. Butter.
Diabetes.
As mentioned before, the game allows you to have up to 4 squad members, each with their own role to play. Engineers are able to restore power by fixing fuse boxes, which can activate save points and unlock doors. Medics will heal you and other squad members, and soldiers are good at killing. Squad AI is decent. Your comrades are effective killers, so much so that there were times that I just sat back and let them do all the work. Although in cramped spaces, their AI can be a little wonky, causing some friendly fire against you. The main thing you have to watch out for with your squad is their mental state and trust in you. The Thing is a movie about paranoia, and the game is the same. If a team member is mistrustful of you or panicking, they won't listen to orders. Or worse, they may attack you and even steal your weapon if they're unarmed. So to keep the trust, you have to be sure to equip them with weapons, keep them healthy, and well stocked with ammo. It's also wise not to shoot them, unless you have to. The freakiest aspect of managing your squad is that any of them could be a thing, and the game randomizes which squad mates are human and which aren't, although there are ones who are scripted to be things no matter what.
The report said the hypo contains a chemical that reacts with blood. Do it. We'll soon know, one way or another.
To combat this, the player has to blood test their squad mates, and sometimes themselves to gain their trust. Not testing your mates runs the risk of them ambushing you at inopportune times. In all though, it's pretty easy to keep your squad mates happy and alien-free. Too easy if you ask me, which I'll touch on more later. What I really dug though is that there were a handful of times the game presented what I like to call trust puzzles, where progression depends on gaining a squad member's trust, pushing you to think outside the box of this simplistic system. It's just a shame there weren't more scenarios like this, as I did feel these were the most clever parts of the game. Overall though, while I do wish there was a little more depth and spice to the whole squad system, I can't deny it adds a fun layer to what is otherwise a straightforward shooter. Along with the blood tests, there's a variety of support items that you will take advantage of. Fire extinguishers, basic health packs, flares, and adrenaline hypos to chill your dudes out. I have no complaints in this department, but the one thing that bumped me is that the flashlight is included with these items, and you can't have the flashlight equipped at the same time with the other support items, which felt cumbersome. I would have preferred the flashlight be its own separate feature.
We got some.
The shooting is fast and often chaotic. For me, it's the style of third-person shooting that felt reminiscent of Max Payne, due to the feel and positioning of the camera. I played majority of the game on mouse and keyboard, which felt great, but I did do some sections with controller just so I could let fans of the original know the controls have been vastly improved. The original had a pseudo-tanky control scheme where the camera and movement were mapped to one stick. Shooting was done with the X or A button, and sidestepping was mapped to the shoulder buttons. Yes, gross, I know. And now with this remaster, we can finally enjoy the game with a standard third-person control scheme. Twin sticks and triggers, praise be to Alien Resurrection. As you may have noticed, the game has a pretty aggressive auto-aim, a necessity in the original game as it didn't feature any sort of free aim other than the first-person view mode, and of course it indicated your enemy's health. While on controller, the auto-aim is still helpful, on mouse and keyboard it did feel a tad unnecessary. And while you oddly can't turn it off, you can turn it down to low, which does push you to be more precise, so good stuff there. But no matter how you control it, combat is frantic and fun. I felt like every moment of combat was shades of the chaos you would witness in the movie. At first blush, there appears to be a good variety of things to kill, but that is a bit deceptive. Things come in two categories: small things and big things. Small things, essentially pest types, can be easily killed with bullets. They're reminiscent of Half-Life's headcrabs and even sound like them. The small ones are more often than not annoying, and to my irritation, there were parts of the game where they seemed to spawn endlessly. Big things, however, are a lot more fun. Taking them out is a two-step process that draws from the source material. You have to weaken them with bullets and then finish them off with fire. And an irritating but admittedly great touch too is that small things spawn from the big things when you kill them, once again drawing from the source material. Running around evading these monsters while weakening them is what brings all the delightful chaos that characterizes the combat. Now, while there are multiple types of things in the small and big categories, I have to admit I had a hard time really feeling the differences in the heat of combat. You'll definitely encounter ones that are faster or slower, and ones that can slow you down with goo. Goo! but none of it tripped up the shoot shoot burn burn formula, and I was yearning for some more variety. Eventually, you do take on human enemies, and yeah, they're not as interesting to fight, and are easier to take out. Honestly, I don't know if they add all that much to the game, but to their credit, if you let your guard down, they can take you out pretty quick, especially the ones equipped with flamethrowers. And I will say, getting headshots on them is mighty satisfying. At the end of the day, the combat is enjoyable. Blasting away things in a hail of fire and bullets never got old. But my one overall criticism is that it all could have been a whole lot tougher. The Thing's gameplay systems revolve around rationing out your supplies to not only keep yourself alive, but also keep your squad mates healthy and sane. And as a game that presents like a survival horror, you would expect some challenge to come from conservation, moments when you are powerless to help your squaddies, and tough choices about when to use your health packs or blood tests. But to my surprise, the game was saturated with boxes of ammunition of all types, so much so that it was not hard to keep myself and my squad fully stocked throughout. Support items were also everywhere. Same with health packs, they were so plentiful it kinda made my medics useless, and on top of softening up the difficulty and undermining the core mechanics, it really undercuts the tension, and tension is something you really need in a horror game. Well before the credits rolled, I had little worry about surviving and just rampaged through it like a typical third-person shooter. I think some of this might be because of the improved control scheme. As much as I like the updated controls, I do admit the stiffness of the original scheme did lend some difficulty. I also don't think this was Nightdive's doing or anything. Comparing the remaster to the original, the pickups appeared identical. Although I didn't have time to play through all of the original, so take that as you will. Now, to be fair, there are new difficulty settings from easy to very hard. This does spice things up. However, the difficulty seems to affect the amount of damage you take and not the ammunition counts, and I was still able to demolish it even on very hard. And if there's anything else the difficulty touches, I'm afraid I couldn't really tell. This didn't ruin the game or anything. Like I said, I was having fun throughout. And obviously, this is a somewhat subjective thing that could be different for other players. But for me, it did leave me wanting more. The thing about the Thing Remastered is that it's pretty solid. In terms of the remaster, Nightdive has once again done a phenomenal job breathing new life into a bygone gem, while staying true to its original intention, hurt only by a few minor technical issues. In terms of the game, well, the Thing isn't the most incredible third-person shooter in the world. The squad system could have been deeper, and the difficulty is pretty soft with the overabundance of ammo and support items. But it is enjoyable from start to finish, due in large part to its chaotic but fun shooting mechanics and clever adapting of the film's concepts into mechanics. 20 years later, it still remains a good example of how to do a licensed game right, even if the story isn't all that memorable. The Thing Remastered gets my recommendation. I think fans of the original game are going to be happy with this effort, and I think fans of the movie who never got around to playing it will find plenty to like. And it's good for those just looking for a good spooky shooter to play over the weekend. What are your thoughts on the Thing Remastered? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, subscribe, share, and smack that bell. If you want to come say hi, my Discord is linked below along with my affiliate links. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.